Hello, Jay.
Hello, sir. How are you, good sir?
I'm good. How are you?
Very, very well. Happy to be here.
Yeah, it's this has been a long time coming, and I'll tell you what, it almost didn't happen today. My apologies for being a little bit late. So you said before, so for people who are listening, hello and welcome. Jay and I are very similar, but also quite different in how we manifest ourselves in the environment, I would say. So I turn up here to the University of Newcastle, to the library, and Jay's just there chilling. You know, did you have, oh, you had your thongs on? Yeah, you know, just like singlet on, all good. And then you contrast that with me. You were saying before, what? Because I've got no self-awareness of these things. So what did I look like coming in?
Well, hello,
Hot mess.
team. Hello, Elliot's viewers and listeners. Well, it just energetically, you walked in and you're agitated, like, and your jaw was moving, and I was like, I could just tell that wherever you had come from, you were very flustered, and you needed to slow down, relax your shoulders, start to breathe through your nose, and then you could have changed that quite quickly, which you kind of are right now, which is beautiful to see.
See, he's working wonders already. But that is really the sort of crux of why I'm excited. Well, there's a few reasons, but this is one of the main ones, which is, that that contrast that we have. I guess to me, you embody what I would like to get to, which is just being chill and just being happy with how things are going, and, you know, nothing seems to faze you, whereas obviously the opposite is true for me. So we're going to get into some of the nitty-gritty of that sort of nervous system stuff, which will be good because I need to learn all about this and then try and use it in my life as well. And I'm sure there's a lot of listeners who feel very similar too. But I want to talk a bit about your story as well. And I really want to talk about this 10-day silent retreat, was it, that you did?
Yeah, we'll call it a 10-day silent retreat. The name for it is actually Vipassana. And you don't want me to try and spell that out because I'll spell it wrong.
Is that loving kindness?
It is indeed, yeah. Equanimity.
There you go. So, I really would like to talk about that experience because 10 days of silence just seems impossible to me. So, yeah, I'm excited to hear about that. But I'm also excited to hear about your story and how you've obviously got to this point where you are today, because there is a bit of a story. And, you know, we love stories here on the Dysregulated podcast, and it's good to be able to talk about someone else's, which is great. And I'm sure the listeners appreciate it as well. So we'll get into that too. But I suppose, how did you get on this journey? This is a very broad, open question. Feel free to obviously talk about this from whatever angle you see fit. But, how did you get on the path to, I don't know if you're quite at enlightenment yet, but you're certainly closer than I am.
I'll definitely take that compliment.
So,
Selflessly, though.
So please tell me, how did you get to this point here today recording with me?
Well, I think everyone has their own hero's journey, which gives everybody hope at the end of the day. My journey did not start off well, though. It was fraught with a lot of resistance. I grew up, as the podcast name suggests, very dysregulated. So, growing up through school, I was struggling to spell, struggling to read from a cafe menu. I don't know if anyone can resonate with this, but I would read a menu at a coffee shop and I just could not read from left to right. I would start left and I'd be down the bottom right, and then I'd be back up at the left, and then I'd just struggle and I'd get the thing that I always got because it just made it easier. That made things very difficult getting through life, but I did not know how to be any better. We only know what we know, not what we're being told, Elliot. So it was quite the journey from that into where I am now, for sure.
Did you know at that time, even from a young age, that your perception or understanding of the world might be a little bit different?
It definitely did. Like was mentioned to before we started the podcast, I definitely had people I had to get my best friends to enable me to get through these things. So my best friend at school, Mari, we would sit down in a spelling bee and with our pencils, we would write a word out like friend. And if I spelt friend wrong, he would scribble out the word that was wrong and then over the top of it write what was correct.
That's a good friend.
And so I got through life that way. But I always had the sense that there was something, the word stagnant always resonated with me. But there was something holding me back and I didn't know how to overcome it at the time.
Did you feel that there was this sense of, I guess, potential, but you weren't quite sure how to tap into said potential?
Yeah, the mental fortitude I had was paramount. I could never give up. So I actually was heavily into martial arts most of my life and competed in martial arts in an actual cage fight. So my mental fortitude was always really, really strong. It was my cognition and my ability to intellectualize things that I just had no understanding of.
So the drive was there, but some of the tools at that point were missing.
Correct answer.
That's a feeling that, I know quite well, as I'm sure many of us do. So as you went through school and got older and, become a teenager and all that sort of stuff where there's such a period of change, your identity's formed and all that sort of stuff, how was that? And I think there were some influences in your home life as well that played its role too.
There's a lot of offshoots to that question, Elliot. I should put the disclaimer down to your listeners that I'm very philosophical with my answers. So I will go on a bit of a journey with the tapestry of words that I use because
hero's journey. Yeah.
I love words now. Coming from someone that was 100% would have been diagnosed as dyslexic, and now being a professional counsellor, trauma-informed therapist and doing community work in Newcastle and having a vocabulary, it feels like I have had a cape on my back my whole life and not known how to fly, and now I know how to fly and I love words. So my apologies if I'm using words that people don't exactly pick up straight away because in a previous life that was me and now I can say these words, so I love to fly.
I love it. And it's true, language it's another of those tools, I suppose. There's obviously a lot of non-verbal language that goes on in communication, but at the same time, being able to articulate thoughts and then be able to present it in a way that people can understand.
100%.
I guess that's what I try to do on here. I don't know how well I do it, but, that's the aim. It would have been difficult not being able to, I guess, do that as naturally and forthrightly as you would like. But as you said, you've got that drive and determination and, I think there's a good lesson just there already, but I think there's going to be a few more. So, what was the next sort of stage of your development as, all this teenage stuff starts happening and young adulthood? How did you overcome these challenges?
Like I said, I had a lot of really good friends and connections that helped enable me to get through. At the time that I became, probably at the age of 22 and I left to where I grew up in northern New South Wales, Yamba, for anyone that's listening around that area, beautiful beach town, best waves on the north coast, you could say, arguably. I ended up moving to the Sunshine Coast and at that point I was aware enough that I wasn't intellectual enough to do anything with my brain. So smart enough to say that. So I decided I was going to either do one of two things with the brawn. I was going to do a natural bodybuilding competition or I was going to have an MMA fight because I'd been in martial arts and they were both my passions. The MMA fight scared me more. So I decided to have an MMA fight and that was a lot of life lessons throughout that period. Apart from getting punched and kicked in the face, more deep philosophical, appreciating life, experiences from that most people wouldn't think from someone that jumps in the cage and fights another man that's meant to beat him up.
And you said you found that challenge the more, I guess, anxiety provoking. I wonder why. but you chose to go down that path. I'm assuming that was to do with, I guess, getting a sense of empowerment and,
Correct.
If I can do this, I can do anything, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, and it gives you a good outlook on life because once you have a really hard training session and people are legitimately trying to hurt you and you know that someone at the end of the road is going to really try and hurt you and potentially kill you, sitting in traffic is a whole lot easier. And my baseline for like stress was a lot lower. So it's something that I teach people nowadays where I implement it even within counseling, not the actual martial arts part, but the mental fortitude of moving your baseline down so we can conduct ourselves a whole lot easier through life.
And that's another reason why I'm so excited to have you on, because that idea right there is exactly what needs to happen with me and what needs to happen with a lot of people, I'm sure listeners as well. It's all about that baseline just being too high and constantly revving too much.
Correct.
You don't seem as though, you rev too high unless you sort of, I guess, choose to.
That's well said as well.
And I guess that's it's more than just a skill. It's it's an approach to living, I guess. But, you've obviously had to work on that to get to that position where you are right now.
Correct.
And the 10-day retreat, I'm guessing we'll get into that in a minute, but that's a bit like the whole, something that seems like a big challenge. And if I can conquer that, I can just about do anything. Would that be right?
Yeah, that's where we kind of tie in that hero's journey, as I mentioned at the start, where you kind of leave your home, leave your amber, go into a new area, Sunshine Coast, challenge yourself, gain new skills, but then you have to use like the skills that you've fortified and refined for yourself. For me, the martial arts did a little bit of that, but the other side of the coin was having to use my brain and actually turn inwards because everything was so external. And when that calling came along, it was fraught with a bit of resistance because I definitely would have been diagnosed with dyslexia and ADHD. I could not sit still, team. And if anyone can resonate with this story, because it happened for me every single day, I would be at work. I'd have one of my best friends with me. We'd be talking to the manager or the site manager, and he would say to us, "All right, Jay, Mitch, this is the task you got to do, A, B." And as soon as he started talking, and this is me at like 28, I would think about something I need to do at home, like my laundry. My brain just went somewhere else. And my boss would tell us that. We'd walk away, and then my mate would tell me what to do, and I'd be like, I didn't hear anything he said. He's like, "Jay, you're nodding your head the whole time." I'm like, I know, but that's the brain of someone that is so dysregulated that I did not know how to be in 1 minute of the moment. So coming into the 10-day silent retreat, I just started meditating for about a year, so there was a bit of a gap there. But all my friends were saying, "Jay, you cannot sit still. Like, there's no chance in hell that you're doing this 10-day silent retreat." It was at that point I knew I could do a 10-day silent retreat, that everybody, except for that voice inside of my head, was telling me you can do it. So that was like that was the precursor to me shifting from external to internal and intrinsically understanding my brain and how it works and the conditioning side of things, and then reframing literally at a later age the whole paradigm of the way Jay thinks.
It's pretty unreal, and you're selling it to me. I'll tell you that
well,
right
I'm not
now.
trying to sell you anything.
No, I know, but mate, fair dinkum.
I tell people this as a community support worker. I don't try to sell anyone anything. I try to give them an experience.
So with the ADHD, just to drill into that a little bit, because I've been sort of researching a bit lately between the connection with ADHD and anxiety and that sort of causing, a lot of this attention jumping around. Did you find that you had sort of this, I guess, rush of energy and this, anxiety, basically, physiologically and cognitively maybe, or maybe more physiologically, but is that your experience of what you remember from the BC, I think we were saying earlier?
Yeah. We're using a bit of a biblical analogy, team, just prior to the podcast, where at 28 everything changed for me, as I'm probably about to dive into and allude to soon. But we're going to call that BC because the J of before 28 was so dysregulated. And after 28 and the experience that I had, which Elliot may prompt me for, which I'm happy to allude to, everything changed cataclysmically. So, yeah, but 100%. The story that I tell, like I remind people, isn't look what Jay can do in 6 years. It's look what you can do. But, yeah, sitting all throughout school, like not being able to spell, not being able to sit still. My friends would have to almost like a mother or father my best friend, he would say, Jay, calm down. And like that was me having my parent tell me, you're being too, you're off the leash.
Extra.
And that's it. That's all through my 20s. Like that. And that's not something I'm even saying to be proud of. It's dysregulation. And it's really not normal because we should be in control of our own body. If we're in control of one thing, there is at least the illusion that we're in control of ourselves. And if you cannot control yourself, then I don't even have an answer for that.
Well, then you create a podcast called the Dysregulated Podcast. That's what you do. So obviously what I'm hearing is classic ADHD.
100,000%.
Yeah, which I'm liking hearing that in the sense, not because I'm glad you went through it, although that is probably a big part of how you are today. So maybe, in a roundabout way, it was a good thing. But also because there's a lot of parallels from what I'm hearing of how I have been and how I guess I still am, but a lot of other people I talk to with ADHD as well. And that's why I think it's good to hear this sort of stuff as someone who's still in the BC sort of world, I
think we can definitely use this logistic.
Yeah. But you did mention that there was a turning point.
There was.
So this was, I don't know the story, but I'm guessing it was quite clear cut. If it's sort of, this is when the penny dropped maybe, or when circumstances got so challenging and so difficult that, well, often I guess we're faced with two choices and one of them is, everything's got to change here because this is rock bottom. Was that sort of what happened here?
Yeah. So, little disclaimer, team. I will get vulnerable with you all, but I like being vulnerable because if my story can shed a light or reflect anything on anyone else, that is paramount because we are, at the end of the day, all just reflections of one another and we are connected. And it doesn't get spoken enough about in a wholehearted way. But like you just alluded to, great words. It sounds like you're almost on the journey with me. But if we follow that story of mine, all the way up until 28, I'm like extremely dysregulated. And at 25, I remember waking up one morning because I always had sinus issues. And my friends would be like, Jay, we've never seen you not sneezing. Unbeknownst to me, that's like a massive issue. But at 25, I wake up one morning, I feel like I got a golf ball on the left side of my sinus. And it was almost excruciating. And that didn't stop, Elliot, for 3 years. I had an infection that was the size of a golf ball on the left side of my sinus that perpetuated, which I was unaware of, with like infections through my bowels and irritable bowel syndrome. And for 3 years, every single day, I couldn't breathe. And I remember not having the words to explain to my family or friends why I felt so stuck. The word stagnant was the word that resonated, but I had no vocabulary for it at the time. And if we go back to when I said I was doing martial arts, my mental fortitude got me through everything. That's what got me through this. I was like, I had this ignorance that was, tomorrow I'm going to wake up and breathe through my nose. But it didn't for 3 years straight. And there's a quote that says, a fool that persists in his folly will one day become wise. And later on I seen that, and that definitely is like the metaphor for what happened with me. So team, 3 years I can't breathe through my nose. I'm trying to figure out the words to express to someone so they can help me, but I didn't have the words and I didn't have the awareness. I didn't have the know-how. So it comes down to a point where I'm literally up against the wall and I get a sinus operation, team, that cost $10,000. And I was thinking at this point it's going to save my life. I say to my dad the night before, because he rings me and says, Jay, this operation, which we thought was going to be public through the public system, is going to be private and you have to pay $10,000. Now, team, I was that adamant about getting the surgery because I thought it was going to save my life. I said, Dad, if they tell me that I had to be bankrupt my whole life and I'm going to continuously pay it off, but I can get this surgery, it's going to fix me, my answer is yes. Which was also the point where I like dissociated from money and I learned that happiness in life and health and wealth are the key pillar. So I get this operation. So 3 years I can't breathe. I get an operation which I think is going to save my life. They end up traumatizing my nose, going in there, like cleaning out my turbinates, opening up my nose, which has never had air in it for 3 years, let alone surgical equipment. And then they put splints up there. So I can't breathe through my nose even more so, and it's blocked. So for 3 nights afterwards, I don't sleep, my nose is blocked, but I still have that habitual blow my nose, blow my nose. Now, not knowing that because of being ignorant, I've now ruptured my nose and I have a clot that's sitting at the top of my nose that can't get out because I have splints in my nose. So I've perpetuated this clot and 3 years has passed and I just wanted to be that fool that persisted in his folly to like become wise and breathe. And I go into the shower and my nose is bleeding profusely. And I know that there's a clot stuck in there because I can feel it, but it's never going to come out because there's splints in there. And I just had this conversation in my head and I was like, you can't do it anymore. Like there's 3 years where you can't breathe and you struggle. And then there's a point where you think it's going to get better and it doesn't. And I felt like my back was against the wall and I had nowhere to go. And I haven't said these exact words ever before to like my family or friends, which gets me a fair bit emotional. But like when you want to end your life, in at least my scenario there, which is like individual to me, no one came into my mind. Like I have so much love for my mum and my dad and my siblings and my best friends especially. None of them came into my mind because the version of Jay, the ego, was obsolete. Like my energy was at zero. I was at death energy and I was legitimately probably dying with the clot in my nose. And I was like, I'm ending my life right here. So if my parents or best friends or anyone hears this, I do want to apologize because I've never mentioned that part. And I don't think I've heard anyone else say it when they've been at the point of wanting to end their life. That no one else at that point, maybe unless someone was there physically, was able to bring me back. It was a conversation in my head and I had 2 versions of myself. It was like a dichotomous conversation. Death energy, legitimate clots coming out of my nose, not breathing for 3 years, perpetuating in I'm going to just kill myself because it's the quickest and easiest thing to do to get out of this. And then that mental brain of the MMA fighter that was always steadfast and would never give up to the detriment of my own body was like, the conversation was like the good and the bad wolf. It was like, end your life, don't end your life. And in my head, the good wolf was like, you're never going to end your life. You're too strong to do this. And I almost had a sadistic laugh to myself now as like the observer in between this conversation. And I was like, if I'm not going to kill myself right now, every single moment of my life moving forward, every single moment. And I do it even when I even do it when I sleep now, like dream analysis, I'm going to put into life. And at that point, if we do use a scale from 0 to 10, I was 100% at 0 with my back to the wall. And the next morning I was at 1. And then I knew straight away that I had issues with my breathing. I became a breath professional and educated myself on breath work. And if we use that scaling, Elliot, over 6 years, I would move 0 to 1 the next morning. I would do breath work. I went to a physio that taught me how to stretch my external cannabinoids, which are the muscles around your neck. So I would breathe every morning. And one morning I felt what 2 felt like. And then it dropped back down to 1, but that's a 200% increase. And then from there, it was 6 years, which if you want to prompt me on it, you can, because I'm on a roll now about the story. And now I'm at 11, brother. And now I'm the energy alchemist, whereby I'm always in a state of being happy and exuberant. And sometimes I might drop down to an 8 at its lowest. But I know what 11 feels like, and I have a routine that's very stringent that I move it back up to 11, and that's where we are now.
So do you think the idea, the way you've described the good, well, not the good and the bad, but the light, the darkness,
Correct.
all that sort of stuff, that definitely resonates with how my experiences of my own situation, I guess asking myself the question whether, it's worth to go on.
Always is.
Does this idea of, a lot of people talk about hope. Was hope part of this, or was it a different, I guess, feeling from within?
That's actually a really good question. I like that. The word hope doesn't resonate. There's not really a word that resonates with me. It's a felt sense. Like where I was at that brink, there was just a happening, we'll call it, that was, we're not giving up. And that not giving up was like, that's always been in my head to this point now where educating myself to an intellectual, professional level, I'm able to transmute that into studying, into having conversations, into if we're sitting and having a conversation for 2 hours, I'm going to use that laser focus to do that. But some people probably do have hope, and I hope this conversation instills hope to people. But for me, it was always going to happen that I just stayed steadfast.
That's interesting because, the way I've always conceptualized that moment and the ability to go again, I guess I've always thought of it in terms of hope, but it's always felt a bit incongruent. It hasn't felt deep enough of an emotion or a feeling. And you spoke about then how it was this feeling more than just a label that's, and yeah, just when you were saying that, I felt the same thing because my attitude was like, we just got to keep going and it doesn't matter. You're born to suffer. That's what we're here for. Now get into it. That was in some ways how, like the Rocky movies, right?
Yeah.
Love Rocky for obvious reasons. But, Rocky is all about you just keep digging in. You just keep going, and that's similar to how I've sort of felt when I've been in those moments where, I've just felt this need to go on and this ability to do so and to endure. And I don't know if that, I don't know if that's a unique thing to people like us or if that's a fundamental human experience. But yeah, just you talking about it then, my first thoughts were, oh yeah, this is hope. But then the way you're explaining, I was like, no, there's a bit more to this. And that resonates with me too. That's pretty cool.
I appreciate it. Hopefully it resonates with other people too, because I'm just speaking my truth at the end of the day, being wholehearted and open. And if that helps one person, that's where I do the things I do now, because I do see myself in other people's situations. And if I had me by my side at that time, it would have helped a lot. So that's what I try to be for others, is a lighthouse.
So this whole 1 to 2, then back to 1, but then to 3, sort of in this scaffolding. So the breath work was a huge part of this turnaround, I suppose. And this is where I start getting excited.
Now, obviously there's no video here, but I am definitely smiling from ear to ear now. Like we're about to talk about the love of my life, breath.
So as I sit here right now, I'm certainly not a skeptic, and I wouldn't say that I need convincing, but at the same time, I'm certainly not, Zen as a natural sort of approach to living. But I'm also well aware that the people that seem to do these things, they seem a lot calmer than I feel. So, and for example, in this room right now, I'm all jittery and stuff and move my hands around. That's part of the autism too, but still, like there's a lot of nervous energy going on. Whereas you look like you're about to meditate, which I couldn't even, conceive of such an idea right now. But you did say that this has been a big shift in mentality, and then a big shift in how, I guess, you approach life and how you're able to approach life. So tell me, if you can, what the process was. How long did it take to get the knowledge or the understanding that you needed, and how did this all come about?
Well, that's a good question, because being that I like coach people, and I don't like that word because I prefer to be known as more of a healer or a best friend or someone's number one supporter, because I feel like the other words are just a little bit of a talking down of someone else. So when I do work with people, it's making it like practical for them. And as your question alluded to, at that point I was at zero. It was one, making the decision. And you can probably hear it in my voice. Like, we can talk about all these different things that we want to change, but until we're questioning the right way and we make a decision that we want to do something, we're not going to do it. So I just ask people. I may not know the answers to Elliot's questions, but I might be able to ask you questions for yourself that give you your own answer. So that's where the counselling comes in, and being someone's best friend comes in. But it was just incremental, brother. There was implementation of yoga. There was implementation of breath work. And this is something I would do every single day, even at work. I would tell my client as I was sitting there, like, just letting you know that I'm just going to do some one nose breathing here, and I would drop into that breath. And so breath work, yoga, infrared saunas, cleansing my body through many different holistic natural modalities that are a little bit extreme to some degree. But I was just on the journey of life, moving that scale from 0 all the way up to where it is now at 11. So if you want to ask any specific questions, please do, because there's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah, well, like when I'm at work, and I get stressed, I do a bit of box breathing. Mm-hmm. I think it's box breathing. I don't know. In for 4, hold for 4. They taught me this in hospital. Out for 4 and then hold for 4 again, which is the bit I always forget, and I just breathe in. I'm like,
Well, do you want me to interrupt for a second? And I actually asked my client this the other day if I could use his scenario. So I work with a gentleman with spina bifida, and he has had been to hospital his whole life, and he obviously speaking for him, so hopefully I don't miss up too many of the words till I get to the premise of it. So needles his whole life, and he had a phobia of getting needles. He and I worked together, and then we transitioned into breath work for about 3 months. I was teaching him the breath work I learned from the 10-day silent retreat, which is an embodiment of breathing, not a methodology of breathing. But you can still use it, as you just alluded to, whenever you want to, but it's rather an embodiment. That's why when you see me in this calm state, I do kind of have that very Zen energy. It's because I'm doing it all the time. Breathing is a zero-time process activity. You don't need time to do it. You just do it. So this gentleman, spina bifida, in a wheelchair, phobia of needles. I can't imagine how many thousands of needles he's had throughout his life. We do breath work for 3 months. I have a conversation with him about 2 months ago, and he goes, Jay, I had my first non-phobia response to a needle because I did the breath work that we were practicing, and I down-regulated my nervous system. I was breathing through my nose, and I didn't get a response. I actually asked him if I could say that story today, and he allowed me to say it. So thank you, Mr. Darren.
That's very compelling.
So it's applicable for everything, but in practical sense, this is a pretty high degree of someone having a phobia to something. So,
because I guess that's how I'm looking at it. In the fact that 24/7, I've said on the show a lot, and it is true, that I'm anxious constantly. Like, I'm anxious now, for example, and we're mates and we're just talking, but I'm freaking out because it's like, there's a lot of things going on, as there generally always is. And I've always had this approach, and this is a new thing for me, which is, and we're talking a little bit about it just before we started recording, which is, I've always approached my mental health and my anxiety from a very intellectual, cognitive sort of way.
Yep, we know this.
So, so it's, it's the thoughts that are wrong, And then it's these wrong thoughts that I'm attaching some sort of belief to, which is then causing this nervous system to be in fight or flight.
Which is like not the worst thing, but like in a spiritual sense, and I'll ask everyone this question, if you can have your eyes open, but can you tell me where, like, if you have a thought right now, can you tell me where that thought was prior to you having it?
Wouldn't have a clue.
And then where do those words go that you just uttered out your mouth? Where wouldn't have a clue where'd they go?
What words?
Exactly. So how are we in control with this, like, cognitive behavior therapy, which it's very like empowering, but the whole concept of we can't control our thoughts. So trying to control something that we're not in control of doesn't have any rationale or substance. And that's where the understanding yourself, become aware, and spirituality kicks in. But spirituality has a bit of a hippie word to it in the Western culture, just becoming aware. Because if we don't know where that thought went to, and I don't know where the last word that I just said goes to, how can we control what is coming in and out of our brain?
Which is, yeah, like that's, I can't see how there's an argument against that. And you just got to think of all the, even...
And I'm not discrediting it, like, by any sense.
CBT? Oh, it's rubbish. I hate it. I hate CBT. Oh, I do though, because like for me, I know that a lot of these thoughts that come in from who knows where are ridiculous. So I challenge the logic of this ridiculous idea that I already know is got no, evidence for it. And then it doesn't do anything because it's still triggering this response, the emotional response and the nervous system as well. And that's why for a lot of people, CBT doesn't work. And I'm one of those people. And I think there's more people out there than the research would suggest. But because like I said, I've always tried to change the thoughts and then thought that the nervous system stuff, all the physical responses of anxiety, of which I'm displaying a few now, very jittery. I thought it was coming from the mind first and then the body sort of second, but I'm now starting to shift this way of thinking that maybe it's my body that is constantly physically in this, I guess, fight or flight mode, and then that in itself lowers whatever walls I've supposedly got, which I don't think I've got any. That then lets all these cognitions and stuff in. So it's completely turning my perspective of these things around because, I've done years and years of therapy and lots of introspection as far as the actual cognitions are concerned. But the way you're talking, which sounds like it's got a better strike rate of helping people at the moment. This is anecdotal, of course, but still, I've tried the other way. And all you got to do is listen to this podcast and know that I haven't been able to figure this out. So it is time for me and probably I would say for a lot of people to really flip the script and change the equation. And that's what I'm trying to do. And then I guess that's why it's exciting to have you on here because you are from the other side of the other camp, and it's intriguing.
Yeah.
It's not that I need convincing, like I said, but I need to know what to do in a way.
How about we put Jay, the professional, individual, I'm a professional human being at the end of the day, professional in many other crafts, but I like the title of professional human being. So how about we put me on notice and you ask me a question that you are currently struggling with, and we haven't pre-planned this at all. And then if that resonates with people, then I'll help. I'm not going to give you an answer. What I probably will do is increase your awareness around your questions so you become more aware of your own answer.
Well, a big problem.
I put myself on notice here, damn.
Yeah, anything could happen here. And of course, no editing because I can't sit still and concentrate enough to edit. So this is just going to keep going. Well, at work, I am customer facing.
Correct.
And there's a lot of social interactions. Now, for someone like me, social interactions is not something that is easy. So every time a customer, I've spoken this on the show as well, every time a customer comes up and is walking towards me, I always get this feeling, oh no, here we go. This is going to, it's more the feeling than the actual thinking, but it's this trepidation, this fear that something really bad is about to happen from this social interaction, like I've got to be on show here and, I've got to protect myself because, they're going to be angry. They're going to do something that's going to, and it's going to wear me out because I can't talk to people all the time. And you can see already while they're walking over, I'm already going a billion miles an hour.
Mm-hmm.
So what are your thoughts on that sort of situation? And, what would you... Not what would you tell me?
Well,
tell me.
It's a good question.
What do you reckon?
How many people would you come in contact with a day where these thoughts come in your head where you're feeling that as, say, I'm walking towards you? How many? Just a random number, X, a day.
100,
okay.
Maybe.
And that thought's happening 100 times almost out of 100?
Yeah, I reckon so.
And how many out of those 100 after we do have a conversation does it go like the script in your head so negatively? Or does it end up being a good conversation where I just ask where the shovels are at Bunnings?
Yes, exactly.
So how many?
So someone's coming over and I'm thinking, oh, God, here we go. And he's like, I'm like, yeah, mate, yeah, what is it? Trying my best to hide my disdain, but it's not really disdain. It's like, here we go again, but it's like, here we go again.
But how many times is it as bad as a cinematic part in your head? Or is it a lot better?
I reckon over the 9 and a bit years I can think of, and you always remember the bad customers. So, if something would have happened.
But we're looking at just the ones
like every
that
day.
aren't as bad as you thought it'd be.
99.8 of humans or human interactions are fine, and that 0.2.
And then we leave that there as it is, like that's the massive incongruence of it is that if 99.8%, like you said, are good and there's only a very small that it doesn't go good, but your brain is telling you that it's going to be bad, what you're pretty much doing and what we learn through mindfulness and breathing properly is that life is like we're watching a movie. And if you're watching the movie of someone coming towards you, what you do in between is you get in between it and you start inserting yourself in the movie and telling yourself that this person's about to abuse me. They're going to ask me a question I don't know. I'm going to get anxiety. But we get in our own way. And through mindfulness, through breathing practices, through embodiment, if we call it yoga as well, we are be able to become aware of Elliot and his thoughts. So your thoughts are there. We allow that next time and you can use so many different modalities leading into it with your breath, but the more aware of Elliot is when, let's say, I'm walking towards you and the thought comes, oh, this person's going to say something that's going to irritate me or I'm going to have anxiety. It's how quickly can Elliot become aware of that thought and then bring ourselves back to the back of the desk. Go back to the exception of 99.8% of people aren't going to do that. We can use our breath to calm our nervous system, to go into a parasympathetic nervous system rather than a sympathetic nervous system. And listening to so many people speak, because we only know what we know, not what we're being told, I think it's good for listeners to hear there is a difference physiologically between sympathetic and parasympathetic, because we know what the word is, but we don't know what that means. Elliot walking in today was sympathetic, agitated. He came in here, said that he had a dry mouth team. These dilated eyes. When you're in a sympathetic nervous system, they're the physiological effects. We can't rationalize things properly because if we are running away from a proverbial tiger, we're not thinking about doing X, Y, Z. We're only thinking about climbing up the tree. That's where it sounds like you are when the people are coming towards you. When we breathe slow, diaphragmatically, nasal breaths, and we control our nervous system, the blood runs away from our extremities because we're fighting or flighting. That's what sympathetic nervous system is. Mm-hmm. We control ourselves through autonomic nervous system. We go into parasympathetic rest and digest, where we do have saliva in our mouth because we're resting and digesting, and we're able to cognitize things at a more rational level. So there's many different things I would do with you, but the first off is knowing that you need to get in between your thoughts and not let them run off, because You've explained the exception, the 99.8% of people aren't doing that to you. And then we add in the actual practicality, which is the breath work, which is the embodiment, which is the understanding of the tools and the techniques you can use in that situation. It's actually so easy that people make it complicated, like you just said.
Yeah. And that maps onto like neuroscience as well. Like the amygdala's the one that's saying, righto, holy dooly, there's threat everywhere. You've got to always be on your toes.
Which is good for 10% of your day, not 98% of the day where most human beings are at.
Yeah. And then like this idea of getting yourself in between
Correct.
is essentially allowing the prefrontal cortex to, look at the situation with a bit of logic and, thinking properly, and then get in between this amygdala hijack that's just going, and then stand in front and then use those higher order processes, thinking processes to, I guess, what was the word, rationalize or come up with, a more logically, I guess, view of what's about to happen and what usually happens, because the evidence is quite clear that everything's fine, really.
It's almost like you're at a zoo and there is a tiger, which elicits the sympathetic nervous system, and there's a war between you, but you're now you're fully safe. Everyone knows they're safe at a zoo between the war and the tiger, but you are telling yourself that tiger is going to jump over there, come through that. Now, you tell someone else at a zoo, you tell a 4-year-old that, they laugh at you because they know that the tiger is behind the cage. But you've gotten in your own head, and that's the film analogy that I'm using before, that we become more aware of what is actually happening rather than being connected to the situation and telling ourselves a story that isn't true. The pre-ramble of that tiger's jumping over that, getting through that guard with the gun, coming behind here where I'm safe as sound through 3 locked doors, is nonsensical. Now, I don't want to diminish it because I've been in the same scenario, but the understanding of that we can become more separated from our thoughts, use the breath, use the embodiment to get through these situations is hope for people, because I've done it. You can do it right now, and everyone at home might have a scenario now where they're implementing it in their mind's eye.
Yeah, because when the customer's coming over, like I can see what my thoughts are telling me is going to happen. Like I'm in it, and I sort of disassociate a bit. And then when they come over, I've got to sort of snap myself out of it and go, oh, hang on, we've got to talk and, actually make some sort of sense. That's what human interactions are about. And then at the end of it, usually I'm like, oh, that was a pretty nice person. I'm glad we had that interaction. Oh, no, here comes another one. Holy dooly. And yeah, like my amygdala or whatever you want to call it, although that is it, but still, wherever this fear is coming from, it just floods in and there is no separation between me and the feeling and what I can see happening, and it completely takes over. Whereas what you're talking about, the film, sort of this, separating from this process.
It's just, mindfulness 101 to a T. Is not letting our minds race, but becoming aware. I get it all the time, and mindfulness is a constant practice where, even for myself, I'll be thinking something if I'm in the car, and as soon as my brain leaves the car and goes into, I've got to get here at this time, and then that's my mindfulness and awareness saying, come back to where you are right now, Jay, because we can't control our next thought and we can't control where our thought goes. So the only thing we can seemingly control is here and now, the internal moment of now. So
is it like a muscle in that sense?
Correct.
The more you do it, the better you get. Like this is, fundamental. It's not basic. I'm not going to say it's basic because it's not, because if it was, everyone would be able to do it. So it's not basic, but it is fundamental.
Correct.
And, I'm the sort of person that if I can believe that the goal is attainable, then I'll work hard for it. My problem is I need to have that belief first. And if the belief's not there, well, then I just expect, rejection, sensitivity, all that sort of stuff. So really, I guess, partly what I'm wanting from today, and I think you are providing it quite well, is, I'd like to be able to have the belief that if I really give this a go, it'll be worthwhile and the results will be there. Whereas typically, previously in therapy, the belief hasn't really been there, so I've never, engaged with the process properly. But you are building a compelling case. As I said,
and I'm not even trying. And
yeah,
that's a good thing.
well, exactly. And like the whole point of this wasn't, I'm not a cynic or anything, but I also, belief in things is not my natural sort of forte and approach to things. So, it's very, very interesting.
It's well, I can use the 10-day silent retreat team. So most people struggle to sit for a minute, let alone 10 days. Now, I did sit 10 days. I'm not saying that in some sort of accolade way.
You can if you want. That's unreal.
I am sitting with my legs crossed right now, if you were able to see this team. Although, as a story from that, there's two absolute gems where, because we are all like mirrors of one another, we are all connected to an invisible thread. I can give you the gems that I learned from the 10-day silent retreat. So hopefully you might not have to lean into a 10-day silent retreat, which can most certainly help with people. I implement it still to this day. One of them is not attaching to good or bad things. So when you sit down for 10 days straight, and prior to this I wasn't doing much yoga, so my knees were in excruciating pain. So by day 3, in my head, I'm getting caught up in the film. I'm thinking about walking out. I'm thinking about going home, grabbing a coffee, going on the beach, going to the gym, hanging out with my mates, saying, I did all right. I did 3 days. Now, Vipassana teaches you that the more we attach to something, the more heightened it becomes. So me complaining about my knees hurting on day 3 and I've got 7 more days, is that making my knees better, or is it making it worse because the pain is there? That situation is not going to end. So me perpetuating it only makes it worse. So during the 10-day silent retreat, we learned that if we have an aversion to a bad feeling, any bad feeling, and your viewers can just think of anything that they have a bad feeling about, that makes us try and get away from it, right? That's where we have anxiety or even depression. But the same is also true if we have a good feeling, and this is where addiction comes in. So I'm addicted to a good feeling, and it can be addiction, but it could also be something that I really like doing, hanging out and talking to you. But then what ends up happening is we have a scale now, a seesaw, and if we use the even the good feeling and the addiction, we're not always going to be able to stay in that state. There's going to be a point where I'm just sitting at home by myself, aimless. And because now there's such a big difference on that seesaw where I really love that high and I can't be that high all the time, so now I'm down here, I drop down and I feel that depressive state because I'm no longer in that heightened state of arousal, enjoying myself with friends. I could even be drugs. It could be whatever other vice you have. You learn that rather than go between high and low, you sit in the middle. You are watching the film. Holy effing shit, my knees are hurting, but I'm not going to attach to the fact that they hurt. And then I also understand that I enjoy life and I like hanging out with my friends and playing sport and being active, but I just want to become more sensitive to both those feelings, not attach them, because everything is always impermanent. If that seesaw goes up too far one side, it's always going to, because of polarity, move the other way. So I learned 3 days in that the more I complain about my knees, the worse it's going to get. And that's the actual teaching of Gautama the Buddha for any of the spiritual people that are listening, is that it's non-attachment.
I wasn't, but I am now.
We learn to not attach to good or bad. Like you said, it's like refining a muscle though, because every single moment it's like refresh, start again, which goes back to the eternal now. There's one more little thing. And this is the most profound part of this story when it comes to addiction and dopamine, which I'm fascinated in as well. Addiction to phones. So we don't have our phone on us. We're not allowed to talk. We're not allowed to make eye contact. It's meant to stimulate being out in the jungle by yourself for 10 days. Now, boredom kicks in pretty quickly because you're obviously by yourself with your own mind. I'm sitting in my room on the 4th day of a 10-day silent retreat team. I know I don't have my phone. And on the fourth day, I'm sitting in my room playing with, I had a toothpick. I'm pretending I was playing Dragon Ball Z for anyone out there. Because I used to do that with my best mate when I was a kid to pass the time. And on the fourth day, as a knee-jerk reaction, classical conditioning, as I'm sure most
Bit
of
of
you are aware of.
psychology. Love that.
Pablo and his dog.
Yep.
I go to get my phone. Knee-jerk reaction. Boredom. Massive boredom. Highest state of boredom I've ever been in. And I'm like, I am now catching myself. Goes back to awareness. Jay, you just went to grab your phone on the fourth day of a silent retreat. Elliot, viewers, I went to grab my phone 2 more times that day out of a knee-jerk classical conditioning reinforcement of boredom. At that point, I have 6 more days to ruminate on the fact that if I'm not in control of my own body's reaction to grabbing my phone, what am I in control of? And then I start to unpack that onion, which is probably a 2-hour podcast where I'm at now, where for the last 6 years I've been unpacking that. I've been taking myself out of the movie and sitting back and being the observer and learning that everything is abundant and full and I love life. But that story changed my whole dynamic and allowed me to become more aware of myself and not getting caught up in the movie.
Did you have a lot of anxiety as well?
Oh, I had a lot of knee pain, as I'll say again. That was, if out of the MMA fight and 10-day silent retreat, they both sit equally there. And I got cauliflower ear for anyone that does MMA or plays rugby. My ear got terrible during fight camp. And they both sat equally at the top. I didn't get anxiety. I just got was fraught with a lot of struggle and resistance to be by myself. And what I learned was I love my best friends and my family. Now, at the end of 10 days of talking, it goes into what I do now of community work. So we're closing the hero's journey. I learned that connection is so key and pivotal to life. The most beautiful thing at the end of 10 days is hearing, Elliot, if you're doing the 10-day silent retreat, and I've seen you sit next to me in silence for 10 days, hearing you speak was like the most, I'll use the word, orgasmic feeling I'd ever felt. So we were connecting because we'd connected on this non-verbal level, but just words were the most orgasmic thing that I ever heard. And it was so like beautiful just to sit and listen to people to talk for hours on end after that. I was at a peak high at the end of those 10 days. But that's the experience of we all are going to have struggles, but we need the right people around us, the right connection, the right mental fortitude that gets us through those hard times that are going to help us get through, because we shouldn't be doing it alone. That's one of my other things. When we lose Elliot and Jay and the ego and we fall into that collective environment, whether that be playing a sport, doing breathwork, doing yoga, any other thing where we lose I and become a little bit more the collective, all our issues are gone temporarily.
That is fascinating because like I said, social interactions are difficult. Like they wear me out, you know. So that makes the idea of connection a bit, you know, like it's a lot of effort, you know, it hurts a bit too. And then when you also layer with this expectation for rejection, which again is just the fear center, you know, saying, all right, well, if we expect rejection, you know, we'll be safe from it then because we won't go looking for connection at all. So
natural survival mechanism of the body.
Yeah, exactly.
Done in a very dysregulated way.
But But as you said, the tiger's actually, you know, it's in the like why are we freaking out here, you know? And I guess that's why this is so important to me, because I have been coming to this conclusion that you know, I'm better off on my own. I'll just do my own thing. You know, it's fine. It's all good. But then you saying all that makes me wonder, do I really believe that doing my own thing on my own is the best way? Or am I, you know, this idea of connection that I believe is probably the better way to do things, but at the moment it seems impossible because it causes all this stress and anxiety. And then you're now saying here's a way to get rid of a lot of that stress and anxiety, so then these connections it becomes organic again and it's enjoyable, and then that is the meaning to life. It's like, whoa, what else has my anxiety been stopping me from, reaching out for that's fundamental to the human experience? Because there's obviously, look, you listen to this podcast, it's not me talking from a position where I've kicked mental illness and everything's sweet, it's not. They're still doing their thing or whatever it is, however you want to conceptualize it. This is still a daily battle, and a lot of these days it doesn't feel like I'm winning, And you said way earlier that part of your experiences growing up and stuff was that you were getting in the way of yourself.
Correct.
And a word that's followed me around for so long is this word, and I hate it, but maybe I need to learn to love it, which is potential. And I hate it because I've always seen or felt that I haven't been able to realise this potential, and it's probably, well, it definitely is, because I've been getting in the way of myself.
Correct.
So you bring all this together, and even you're talking about the seesaw effect of what goes up real high and the dopamine and stuff, and I was thinking then that's ADHD, classic ADHD. So that all makes sense. It all makes sense. But like I said, what really this conversation for me was going to come down to was whether I would have this feeling of belief in this. And I really want to, but at the same time I wasn't, well, you can't force it, can you? You either, you do start to believe or you don't, And I am starting to believe, which is great because, what I've been doing traditionally has not done the job because, there's a lot of potential, it seems, that's being squandered, still being squandered. Whereas you're sitting opposite me, you're like a complete opposite to me. I'm sitting here all jittery and moving everything around. You're just chill. And you're offering these experiences or not so much the experiences because that's all unique, but it's the transformation.
Correct.
And the mindset that you're now in and what it's allowing you to do in life. And then I hear about connections, and it's like connections. I'd almost given that away, and I've almost become comfortable with the idea of not, even though I know that connection is what it's all about. That's in many ways why I do this podcast, because I want to connect with people on a certain level, I guess, like an intellectual but emotional. And
let me interrupt just quickly because it's a beautiful, when you listen to words, you were talking about trying to believe coming into this, what I was saying could work for you. And then you just then, Elliot, used the word, that connection's key. And do you believe your parents are your parents, or do you know your parents are your parents?
Oh, I know. Yeah.
And things that we believe are still a little bit abstract. Things that we know, we have that felt sense. Survival, when your back is against the wall and you're showering, you want to end your life. Connection is, I know that when I'm running around with my best friends, my issues dissipate for at least that time that I'm running for an hour. If I'm kicking a ball with my best friends, if anyone can think of their favorite sport or favorite thing to do in a collective energy, that's where that knowing comes in. We all know it. Without love, we're not born. Without the 6 years of our caregivers being there for us, we don't survive. We know that connection and love is key. We can believe in other things, but we know this. So my suggestion for everyone as a listener is, if there's something that you know, and give yourself a little bit of noble silence, lean into that. If it's some sort of sport, if it's a book reading club, if it's studying a new thing, give yourself a little bit of silence. Because we all know connection's key. Find where that connection is for you, or reach out to someone that knows within the community where connection is, and then lean into that connection, because you know that connection's key. I know that love and connection are key, and so does everyone out here listening, just because we vibrate off that frequency.
Yeah, and the biggest high that I get is, well, one of them is, for example, I do my presentations for Black Dog. But it's not during the presentation. It's not even the end when it's like, oh, I can relax now. How good's this? It's after, when people then come up to me and share some insights into their own story. And I've always maintained this. I've done an episode on it 4 years ago, I think it was. I think it's called My Greatest Honour. Of course, a brilliant episode. But why am I laughing? But the premise of it is that it is an honour, it's a privilege to have this level of connection with people. I've always maintained I'm a lover, not a fighter. You know, you're both. Right? And actually, I say that, but no, I'm a fighter too in my own way, and I guess we all are.
Which is beautiful to hear. Like, it's empowering to hear that.
Oh, big time. But I'm much more comfortable, I guess, admitting I am a fighter part, but I also know innately that it's the lover part that's the real, the fighting stuff's good and that's protected me and that's why I'm still here. But the reason that there's the fight is because of the love, the potential.
It's the protector of, it's like the Trojan walls before you get into the building. We all put up our own walls. And the quote that comes to mind is, it's better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war. So we all have that side of ourselves. Women have it with their masculine, we have it with our feminine. So it's good to understand that shadow where that warrior is. And then it's better to embody it but never have to ever use it, and just give as much love as humanly possible, because love resides in all of us.
That's right. It does. And it's I don't know. And it's important as well. Like, we've spoken a lot about ADHD, but one of the other disorders I've got is borderline personality disorder. Now, BPD is horrendous. They're all horrendous in their own way, but BPD is particularly sinister in the sense that it tries to convince you that love isn't for you. You know, you've got something wrong. You're defected somehow. You know, you're not worthy of this, and that's unfortunately something that I've struggled to push back against. And there's been some experiences where, maybe I love too much, you could almost say, but at the same, I feel a bit burnt by it all. But then it's like, okay, hang on. How much is this is just actually underlying anxiety that's just trying to, protect from, because love has caused all this pain previously. But, it's, there's so much more to it than that. But again, it just ties back to these fundamental, I guess, physiological, the nervous system's trying to protect and fight off all these, and it's like, I think in doing that, it's shutting off what is really the core of being human.
There we go.
So there you go.
Hit the crux.
So, it's, as somebody, as I said, although we all are, that's the whole point, but I know within that, my brand of love is very unique. But at the same time,
everyone's love is like stardust at the end of the day.
Yeah.
That's the beautiful part about it, that your uniqueness is your uniqueness and everyone else has that stardust in them. But we never want to be an imposter version of someone else. The beautiful part about someone is the way they laugh, or the quirkiness in the way that they talk, or what they do, their idiosyncratic ways. That's beautiful. That's why I love refining in people. I love when someone has freckles on their face. Like, that's the beauty. Someone that looks exactly like someone else and is an imposter does not appeal to me whatsoever, because these things are fleeting. But again, it goes back to that love and connection and embodiment, which is, we all have that.
We do. And when I say I need belief, it's not that I need belief in the how important and how deep love is as a concept, and the feeling, everything goes with it. I already know that. I don't need belief in the fact that I have it and that, there's a lot of good in that, even if sometimes it's gone a bit, haywire, but that's okay. The belief that I guess I've needed and need but am getting is that I'm able to tap into it in a healthy way that's not self-destructive. I know it's a good thing. I know it's a fundamental. I know connection and all that is I know I pretend I don't need that, but obviously I'm not that silly. But the belief is that I'm able to lower those walls and be accepting of the fact that I am able to use this in a good way and that it will do good things for me. I can believe that in other people, like if anyone else was to say this sort of stuff, I'd be like, oh, come on, man,
Correct.
Humans are social beings. It's all about connection. It's easy. But obviously talking about these things with the self is difficult.
In your own way.
Yeah, is difficult. But it is a fundamental of being. And that's, it's my, I guess, goal is to then now get into a position physiologically, psychologically, all of that, where I'm able to approach, I guess, this phenomena in a way that's not approaching it with fear and seeing bad things happening and all that sort of stuff. So, yeah, it does sound as though, intellectually I already know, and I know this. I mean, I know what's going on. I've got lots of insight, too much insight, I reckon. But, like I know the thought processes. I know, if we want to put them around diagnoses and stuff, I know how it fits and I know, but it's the belief that this can be changed and good things can happen. And I think fundamental for me is to dial down the anxiety around everything, but then that also dials down the walls around everything, which is what's so important.
And I think if my story can reflect anything, it's like 28 years old with the diagnoses of like learning difficulties, ADHD, and now becoming a professional in many different fields. It's not look what Jay can do, it's look what other people can do, because we all have our own hero's journey. But if we can not have something for 5 minutes, we can learn to not have it for 10 minutes and an hour and a day. So we're just leaning into that collective energy each time and then dissolving the illusion of those issues temporarily.
I am addicted to my phone though.
If that 10-day silent retreat story doesn't hit home to everyone else, like that was 4 days. So,
but I don't know. Like I check the graph of who's listening to the podcast like every half hour, and I live and die by that number.
Which is like, I think it's also a sound mind to normalize it and not put a perfectionist mind even on the art of being mindful, because still people have that perfectionist mentality of it. It's constantly refining, just like a muscle. But yeah, that is, if there's something to take away, it's just anyone listening out there, if they can lean into one thing that they're fraught with a bit of resistance about, but they want to do, even if it's dancing, play a sport, like kick a ball around, invite your friend around, tell your mum you love her, and feel what that feeling feels like. And then refine that and work on that like each and every single day, and you'll live at least a much better life.
I love it. Well, I reckon that's a good place to pause because, let's be honest, we're going to come back to this. We've got more to talk about, but at the same time, I think that's really powerful. And I've really enjoyed, because I guess you can approach this idea of the breath work and stuff very neurobiologically.
Correct. You get intellectualized.
And I wouldn't again, this is for me personally, there is a place for this too, but for me as I'm sitting here right now, I wouldn't have gained anything really from that because I already know it. But it is this more holistic, spiritual, I know not everyone likes that term, thinking it's a bit woo-woo, but, we are human spirits at the end of the day. Like it's, again, the fundamentals.
We think too much, Elliot, and feel too little. And once we start feeling, we start to become much more realigned with our purpose and intention in life. And that way we can self-navigate the terrain of our life a whole lot easier.
That up and down, the dysregulation. Well, thank you, Jay.
Thank you, Elliot.
Love it, mate.
Good to see your face.
This has been a long time coming.
It has been. I feel like I've met a white elephant.
And I'd like to, and that's one of the best compliments I think I've ever had. And I'd like to think that, it's the universe that has decided now is the time, we can't rush these things. So I'm going to blame the universe for the reasons. I've got to be careful saying that. No, but it's great to get you on the show and to hear your insights. And like I said, there's plenty more to talk about. There's more of your story to talk about, I reckon, as well. But that was very, like I've known you for a fair while, but, the vast majority of that is obviously I've got a bit of an idea of the transform because I've sort of seen it from, not from right next to you, but sort of floating around.
Correct.
But this is definitely a level of insight that goes beyond what I was expecting. And so for that, I thank you. I thank you for coming on. I thank you for starting to get the ball rolling as far as me and potentially this belief thing goes. And
just say it is going to happen before we close. Like, put yourself out there for yourself and the viewers. Like, not potentially, it is. It's an embodiment.
I'm telling you, box breathing.
You just say you're going to do it. Just come in and do one of the breathwork connection sessions that myself or one of my good friends are going to do. Just say you're going to do it.
I'm going to do it.
There we go.
And I'm going to record it.
It's on record.
And it's going to be pretty quiet because I won't be saying anything. But
and that's all you got to do because we've all done that. Like, just lean into it.
No, I love it. No, very good. Thank you, mate. Appreciate it.
You're the man.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a good one.